So first of all, thank you all so much for coming. Good afternoon. I know the weather is not what we would want it to be, but it's even more that we get a chance to see each other and share words of Torah today. I want to thank Frida and Eddie for opening up their home to us to have this class. And today's class will be for the Fu'ah Shelema of Yeshaya ben Rina, and also for Rachel Sarah bat Jamil. And so everybody should be healthy and happy coming up to the holiday of Purim. Speaking of which, are there any, we could do a quick crash course if you want, or if anybody have any questions related to the holiday of Purim, feel free to ask them. We know there's 4 mitzvot on Purim, to read the Megillah night and day. Women, by the way, are obligated in all of these mitzvot, so night and day, to give mishloach manot, some kind of a care package to a colleague or a friend, matanot levyonim, to give tzedakah, money to the poor, and also to conduct a seudah, a festive meal. Someone asked me a question before, so I'll just mention it. One of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to mishloach manot is the idea of the 2 berachot, right? So I think we've all been taught as we're in grade school that you have to have 2 berachot in a mishloach manot. So it's not actually true. It's not actually mentioned anywhere that you have to have 2 berachot in a mishloach manot. I think that practice developed because you want to make sure that you have 2 different foods. You have to have 2 distinct foods that you're giving to one person. So if you have 2 foods that have a different beracha, you're guaranteed that it's going to be something different. But if you give chicken nuggets and you give also something else that's shakol, that's not chicken nuggets, that constitutes 2 foods, and that's a perfectly acceptable mishloach manot. So as long as you have 2 distinct foods that are separate in taste and in name, that's sufficient to be considered mishloach manot. I know sometimes I get calls frantically from women saying, I had too many mizonot, everything in my thing is mizonot, I have lahmajin and I have sambusak and I have 95 things are all mizonot, but all of those things are different foods, they're all fine. If you package 2 of those things together, it's considered a mishloach manot.
What?
Not liquids?
It stopped, I couldn't finish. I'm listening.
Not a drink, you mean? I could hear that, right? It should be something that is respectable. So I would say that a water bottle probably doesn't send the greatest, like I was, thinking of, a nice can of seltzer, like a Perry. I think that would, to me, I would be fine with that. I don't think that has any problems. Drinks and beverages and foods are alike considered that way. If one wanted to be extra cautious and put a second food in there, by all means, you could do that. But I think it's fine. As long as it's something that is significant, it's chashuv, it's something that would say to the person that it's worthy, it's befitting to give to somebody, I think that's acceptable. Yeah, absolutely. As far as giving matanot levyonim, women are obligated to give matanot levyonim, so you should take some of your own money. It's about $5 to 2 people, so a minimum of $10. But of course, the more a person gives, the more the mitzvah is appreciated. And so therefore, you should make sure to give from your own, not just let your husband do it on your behalf, but you should give from your own to give to tzedakah. The meal has to be conducted during the daytime, and we all take part in all those festive meals, and then make sure to read the Megillah or hear the Megillah twice, one at night and one in the daytime. Any other just questions? That's a very basic overview of what we should be keeping in mind during Purim. Thoughts, questions? Good? All right, very good. So in that case, we'll proceed with the topic for today. We've been discussing Pirke Abot and different life lessons from the rabbis. And what I want to do today is open with the following question. How many times have you ever sat around the table and discussed with family, friends, new people, what would you do if you won the lottery? Anybody ever played this game? What would you do if you won the lottery? You instantly became $200 million richer. What would you do? By the way, it's a great icebreaker. If you're ever at an event with people who you don't know, you want to get to know them a little bit. It's actually a good window into a person's soul. You can kind of see a little bit of what they think about, what they prioritize in life. So if I threw out the question here, what would you do with newfound wealth, $200 million? What would you do with it? Anyone want to dare to say? Marilyn? Okay. Okay. So homes be together, family, travel, great. Anything else? Tuition, lifelong tuition, school, college, maybe an endowment fund. Very good. Anybody else? Okay. So it sounds like a home is a big one. You should hear the high school responses to this question. It's pretty interesting. What? Yeah, high school students have some very creative answers. Well, that's why it's a great game, because it tells you what's on the mind of a 17-year-old and what's on the mind of people in a different stage of life. So at some point, I'm sure everyone has contemplated this idea, whether you give genuine answers or you really have those hidden things that you're like too afraid or scared to say that you would spend money on. Everybody kind of plays this game at some point in their mind. But what I'd like to suggest to you is that actually it's a very dangerous game to play. It can actually really be very damaging to the person to play these types of theoretical games. And I'm not telling you have to stop playing it, but I'm just saying that the idea is that it gives us a little bit much to our imagination. Now, when I say the word imagination, do you think of imagination as a positive thing or a negative thing? Could be both. What do you mean? You don't know how to control it. So typically when I ask that question, most people say, oh, imagination is a great thing, right? Because we're taught from a young age to use your imagination and think about things, and imagination leads to creativity and new inventions. And people who are very imaginative have the ability to create a lot of new things for us to be able to use. But like you said, if you don't use your imagination properly, or your imagination tends to drift into what I don't have and what I wish I had, and maybe imagination leads to fantasies, that could be very damaging to the individual. There have been many studies that have been done about winning the lottery, for example. There was a famous study done in 1978 at Northwestern University, where researchers took 20 people who they had surveyed before at an earlier time, 20 people who became paraplegics, lo aleno, and 20 people who had won the lottery. And they wanted to measure their level of happiness 6 months after that defining moment in their lives. Two very different sides of the spectrum, right? Somebody who wins the lottery is euphoria, excitement, doors are open to them, they're riding high. Someone who, God forbid, went through a traumatic accident, lost their ability to move. For some people, they might not even want to continue living after something like that has happened, right? So they wanted to measure how these two events, diametrically opposed to each other, how it impacted their level of happiness 6 months after the particular event had occurred. What do you think they found? Take a guess. They actually found that They actually found that paraplegics 6 months after their accident had a higher level of happiness in comparison to what they were before their accident than lottery winners had 6 months after they won the lottery as compared to what they were before they won the lottery. Which is fascinating because none of us would ever expect such a thing. You'd assume everyone wants to be a lottery winner. Nobody, God forbid, wants to go through that type of a traumatic experience. And yet, leaving aside how they measured it, they measured their happiness to be higher. How do you explain that? Why would that be the case? Any takers? Appreciation, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. What do I want? So that's an interesting idea. So you're saying that the adversity that one had to experience and the ability to overcome that adversity is where they draw a lot of strength from and happiness from, as opposed to the lottery winner who has no adversity, maybe the opposite, and they're not getting that sense of gratitude or that sense of self-gratification. Materialistic, fake, not real. Yeah. Right. So that effort, that struggle is where that sense of the sense of happiness and sense of self-confidence really kind of comes from. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So be managing expectations differently, and then even if my expectations are lower, but I meet them or I exceed them, I feel like, oh, Excellent points. All excellent points, and actually none of the points that I was going to raise, but all of them very, very valid and all very, very good, 100%. But is then one other thing that the researchers actually observed. The big difference was how their relationships with other people changed. When people won the lottery, they typically started to become very introverted, very isolated, because they started to become suspicious of everybody around them, that everybody around them was just wanting to drain them of the money that they had. So nobody says, well, I want to win the lottery so I can get into a relationship with someone who's using me, right? Nobody wants that. But all of a sudden, people come out of the woodwork and start building these relationships with people, and it's obvious that they're frauds, that they're fake. And so it becomes very difficult for the person who's the lottery winner to build deep, meaningful relationships. And on the opposite side, the paraplegics were able to have real meaningful relationships with people. And it was through the relationships that they were actually happier individuals. That's what the research showed, that the deep relationships, what we all crave for, is not materialism, it's not possessions, it's not all of those things that society tells us we should want. It's actually the ability to have relationships. If I asked you, what are you looking forward to this weekend? What are you doing this weekend? Most of us would not say, and I'm traveling, I'm going here, I'm living the life of the life of the rich and famous. No, we'd say, I'm going to sit with my family. I'm going to get to have dinner with my kids. I'm going to get a chance to just lounge around and rest. I'm going to be able to be with my husband, who worked very well. My husband was away this week. Whatever it is, a lot of us are going to say very basic things, most of which have to do with the relationships that we have. Notice how many people said, what do I do with the lottery? I would use that money on other people. Another big statistic, lottery winners who won and used the money on themselves had a lot less happiness than ones who used the money on other people. Because when you spend on other people, you build that relationship with them, and that breeds happiness in a person's life. So the lottery is an interesting psychological study that you could do, and you can go in a lot of different directions at this. But I'll leave you with one more question about the lottery, and then I'll say what the rabbis, I think, were intending about this, which is, why do people still buy lottery tickets? If we know all of these negative things about winning the lottery, and we know that the numbers of winning the lottery are astronomical, why are people still buying lottery tickets? Why do they do that? Why do they wait? It's literally wasting money. Every one of us would agree. I'm wasting money. I'm almost embarrassed to tell somebody that I bought a lottery ticket before in my life. Like a shameful thing for me, at least for me. I don't know how it is for other people, right? Yeah? Right. What are you doing? It's like almost an embarrassing thing for me. Right. But it's obviously people are buying them, scratch offs, this. They wouldn't be selling them if people aren't buying them. It's incredibly lucrative. Why are people still buying them? Because the lottery is playing on their imagination. It's playing on the things that they fantasize about. It used to be the tagline for the buying a lottery ticket was, hey, you never know. That's what it was. Hey, you never know, right? What a genius marketing campaign, hey, you never know, is what it's doing is it's triggering that fantasy portion of your brain to think about, hey, you never know what the possibilities could be. What could I do? And you start to live and take yourself out of the world. You start to live in fantasy land instead of living in reality, because the reality portion of your brain is saying, this is the dumbest thing in the world. What are you doing, right? You can do infinitely better things with even that $1 or $2, how much you're paying for it, than wasting it on buying a lottery ticket. But that imagination part of our brains that they're triggering is what's activated at that time. And that's why we're doing it. And I think the rabbis put this idea into two very interesting mishnayot in Pirke Abot that I think when we delve into them a little bit more, we'll see it's a major theme of the holiday of Purim. I want to read to you these two mishnayot. There are two rabbis who list three things that take a person away from the reality of the world. And I'm going to argue that these three things that each one quotes, they're actually parallel to each other. So listen to the first one. Rabbi Yoshua says, the evil eye, ayin hara, the evil eye, the yetzer hara, a person's evil inclination, the sinata beriot, and hatred for people, motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. They take a person out of the reality. So the evil eye, the evil inclination, and hatred for people take a person away from reality. Let that sink in for a minute, right? Evil eye, evil inclination, and hatred for people. What do you think? What do all three of those things have somewhat in common that you think take a person out of reality? They make a person not be able to think about the current life that they're living, real life. Hold on to that for just a minute. I'll read to you the second Mishnah, and maybe it'll unlock the first. The second Mishnah is very similar. Rabbi Elazar Kapar Omer, Rabbi Elazar Kapar says, Hakina'ah, jealousy, v'hata'ava, temptation, v'hakavod, and honor take a person out of reality. Motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. Use that second one. Jealousy, temptation, and honor take a person out of reality. What do you think that means, Marilyn?
So the jealousy one, I think, again, you're focusing on what you don't have and what Hashem needs each of us our own gifts. And the jealousy means you're not focusing on what Hashem gave you and your own two laps, and you're saying, I wish I had X, Y, or Z, but that's not meant for your mission and not meant for your path. And that kind of goes into also Ayin Hara.
Beautiful, yeah.
Ayin Hara, that means what you're saying is yours and not really from Hashem. If it's from Hashem, how can somebody give you an Ayin Hara? They can't.
Excellent. So I want to make that connection 100%, and I want to play on something that you just said. What are we, when we're jealous of somebody else, what are we really saying in our heart of hearts? Someone has more money than us, a better car, a better home, or it's not materialism, someone's better looking than us. We like their spouse is nicer than our spouse. Whatever it is that we covet or desire from somebody else, what are we really saying in our deepest recesses of our consciousness that maybe we're afraid to actually articulate, but what are we really saying? Sense of entitlement, maybe. Something could be entitled, yeah. I should have something else. I want to what? I want to be that other person. That's what we're really saying, right? What I have is not the life intended for me. If only I had that other person's life, I'd be much happier. If I had what they had and I was them, I want to put myself into their shoes and be them. And if I had that, I'd be happy. I want to read, yeah. 100%, right? You're looking at them as being more blessed than you are, and you wish that you had those blessings, and you believe that you'd be happy if you were them. I want to mention to you the pasuk in the Torah that talks about jealousy, and you're going to notice right away something is off. The Torah says, don't desire your friend's home, their spouse, their servant. You can put in anything you want over there, their maidservant, their donkey, their ox, or anything that they have. What's wrong with that pasuk? What do you notice is doesn't seem to fit in properly in that pasuk? What? Wife and ox is in the same sentence, okay? Definitely. Thinking back, okay. Why didn't the Torah just say, don't be jealous of anything that you have? And just leave it at that. If you're going to tell me don't be jealous of anything that someone has, just leave it at that. And that includes everything. Why does the Torah list thing by thing and then at the end say, and don't be jealous of anything? Why does it list it one by one? You want, And why those specific things? Let's assume for a minute, those are the things that people tend to naturally covet from somebody else. Materialism, a spouse, whatever it might be. Okay. Why would the Torah go from big to little, though? I would think maybe we go the opposite way. But okay, I'll take big to little, maybe. Marilyn? Okay, I like what you're saying. I'm going to give you a different approach. You know what the Torah is saying? When you're jealous of someone, you know what you think to yourself? If I only had that one thing that they had, I'd be happy. I just wish I had the same car as my neighbor. If all I had was the same car as my neighbor, I'd be happy. My life would be fulfilled. What ends up happening when you get the car of your neighbor? There's another thing. Oh, if I only had that thing. In other words, the Torah is hinting to us by listing all of the things one after the other, what the psychology of the jealous person is. If you are a jealous person, you will never be satisfied. No matter how many things you accrue that are similar to those around you, you will never, ever be satisfied. It'll go from house to wife to servant to dog to whatever it is. It's just going to go down the line. And that's why you can't covet anything that somebody has, because there's no end to how your imagination and your fantasy will play games with you. It'll tell you all I need is that one thing. But once you get it, it'll tell you you need the next thing and the next thing. Because there always will be somebody who has something that you don't have. There'll always be something that you want that someone else has that you don't. And so it'll never end. That's the nature of jealousy. And that kind of also bleeds into temptation. We say temptation is the same as the Yetzer Hara. What does the evil inclination do? It tells us if I just fulfill this one temptation, I'll be satisfied. There's a void, and you say, okay, if I just fill that void with this one thing, I'll be okay. The void will be full. But that's not the way the human mind works. You fill it with one thing, and then when that wears off, not only do you need another thing, but you need something even greater than that. You're never satisfied with that one pleasure. Now you need something that's even more pleasurable. And once you get that, you need something that's even more pleasurable. And you have to keep hitting your brain with more and more stimuli that are going to give you more and more pleasure as you continue to go. And the rabbis have an amazing statement. They say a person does not pass away from this world having achieved even half of the temptations that they wanted to. A person can conjure up all of the crazy things in their mind that they wish they could do, or wish they could have, or wish they could please themselves with, and it'll never, ever end. So once you're a tempestuous person, once you give in to your urges, to your temptations, to your desires, and you unlock that, it's very hard to close it. It stays open, and you go from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing. I'll just give a simple example. It's a little extreme, but this is what happens to addicts, people who are addicted, let's say drugs. They start with a small drug, that's what they call gateway drugs. They start with something small, something that's it's not such a big deal. It gives them that hit. And once that hit, eventually it stops working. The brain becomes immune to it, right? It becomes numb to it. So you got to hit it with something a little harder. And you keep going, and then you go to the next big thing and the next big thing. And that's why an addict on one drug leads to a second drug and a third drug and a fourth drug. And if they don't break the pattern, it'll just keep escalating. There's no such thing as I'll stop here just because. A gambling addict who starts doing, I'm just going to do the slots, just going to do penny slots. It's going to lead to one thing and the next thing and the next thing, because that's the nature of our minds. It has to keep getting hit with the next best pleasure that we want to fulfill in our fantasy, in our imagination, that our minds are playing. And now you're not in reality. You don't see yourself for who you are and what you're doing. Marilyn mentioned the ayin hara point, right? Ayin hara is all based on jealousy. It's one person showing off what they have that brings the ire of jealousy from somebody else. So the one who's showing off is somebody who feels that they need to get their hit of honor and kavod by boasting about what they have, by presenting themselves in a certain way, and they get a high from the fact that other people are looking at them. They want that. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to attract the ire of somebody else. What they don't realize is that arouses jealousy in somebody else, and that person now sends them negative vibes, that negative energy that's going towards you. And that has a real effect, a real impact on what goes on in the world. God might have sent someone a beracha of wealth to do good things with it. Maybe it's a test for that person. That person begins to show it off, and someone else now gives them ayin hara. God says, that's not what I intended for you to do. I didn't intend to give you that beracha so you can make someone else feel inferior. I'm taking that beracha away. I'm taking that away. A child, I give this to the 17-year-olds, gets a brand new car, right? They start showing it off to everybody in their class. A lot of people they know who are not going to get that privilege to them. And come, look, and this and that. I'm talking about someone who's really showing off, right? All of a sudden, God says, maybe they're not really deserving of that. That's not why I gave it to them. I gave it to them so they could go pack packages for SBH and that they can go visit people in the imperial house. I gave them that car. I gave them that family, that beracha, so that child could use that for positive. They're using it for negative. I'm taking that away. That's not what it was intended for. It arouses the judgment, the ire of Hashem on that person because of the jealousy, that negative energy that is created by showing off and by creating other people of being jealous. It puts people out of reality, puts them out of touch with who they are and what they, and like many people said, counting their own blessings, appreciating what they have. I'll mention the last one and then I'll tie it into Purim. The last one is honor. And honor is perhaps the most poisonous of all of them because it's not like a tangible thing, but people who are very arrogant, people who want honor, they want recognition for everything that they do, tend to come to hate people. It leads to sinat habiriyot. because they always feel like someone's out to get them, someone's out to slight them. They're always worried about their standing and how other people look at them. And you'll never be satisfied with yourself so long as a person has that type of view. They're always thinking about what people are thinking of them and how honored they are, and are they getting the best kavod, and they chase it, right? And people don't like that, and they end up leading to tension and hatred between others. Someone wants to have honor, they put somebody down to make themselves feel better about themselves. They demean other people. So being somebody who is enveloped, is consumed by your honor, your ego, your status is always somebody who's going to look at everybody else around them in a negative way. Am I better than that person? Am I better than that person? Am I better than that person? And you just develop a terrible perspective on people. Anytime someone does something good, you don't say, wow, what a good thing that person did. You say, well, I'm better than that. I did this, they did that, I did this. What a terrible way to look at people. What a terrible way to interact with other people. You develop a sin'ah, a hatred for other people. And you start to think of yourself in a way that is not real, that's not true. You look at yourself as something that is not in the reality of this world. And so these things really connect to each other. Ayin hara, the evil eye, and jealousy, they play on a person's imagination, their fantasies. Yetzer hara, the evil inclination, and the ta'ava, and desire, they play on a person wanting to get pleasure in what they could achieve, and they'll never reach it. These things are unattainable. And honor, a person is constantly chasing. The rabbis say, if you chase honor, it runs away from you. So you'll constantly be chasing it. You know who gets honor? The people who run away from honor. Honor chases them. The people who are humble, the people who are modest, the people who are private, those are the people who everybody really recognizes as being the true great people. Questions or comments to this point? Thoughts? Now, I want to leave you with one last point. And that is, if you took all of what we just talked about and you had to envision one character in the Tanakh who represents all of what we just spoke about, who would it be? I would say it could be a few different people. I would say it's Haman. The character who jumps out to me is Haman in the story of Purim. And really, while all of us are focused on Esther and Mordechai, the hero and the heroine of the story, in my opinion, Haman is the most intriguing character because Haman self-destructs. It really doesn't take much for Esther and Mordechai. They just seize the opportunity. But who gives them that opportunity? Haman gives them that opportunity. Haman is self-destructive because he lives in this fantasy world. He lives in this lack of reality. He doesn't see himself for who he really is. If you're Haman, you are the second in command of the most powerful empire in the world. You answer only to the king, one step above you. You have unlimited power, unlimited prestige, unlimited wealth. You have everything that anybody in that kingdom would want, save for one person, Achashverosh. That should be enough. You should be able to ride into the sunset, enjoy the rest of your life. He's the lottery winner. Haman won the lottery. And what can he not get past? He can't get past the fact that there's one puny little Jew who won't bow down to him. He matters nothing. He's a squash. He's an insect. Mordechai is nothing to Haman. If I was Haman, I'd say, okay, this guy's not whatever he is. Dismiss him. What do I care? Okay, the whole kingdom is bowing to me. What do I care about this one guy? He eats Haman up inside because he's living in fantasy land. He's living in La La Land. His desire is to be the king, to take over Achashverosh, to be married to Esther. So when he gets invited to the parties, he's thinking in his mind, whoa, the queen wants me. I could be the king. I could be this. He's playing all of these fantasies and imaginations in his mind instead of focusing on what he is in reality. Second in command, just let all of this go. Why should I even care? Why should I even bother? One of the saddest lines in the entire Megillah, but in my opinion, it's maybe the most important line because we don't realize how much Haman we have in all of us. That's a frightening thing to say, but it's the truth. We all have Haman in us more than we probably care to admit. You know what Haman does? Haman is coming home after being invited to Esther's banquet for the second day in a row. He's riding high. He is on cloud 9. He is so excited. And he sees Mordechai, and Mordechai won't bow. And it eats him up. And he comes home, and the text tells us, he tells his family how much power he has, how much wealth he has. The queen wants him to be at the banquet second day in a row. He has everything that anybody could ever want. And you know what Haman says? He says these words, Kol ze enenu shoveli. None of this matters at all. He says, all the money I have doesn't matter. The family I have doesn't matter. The power I have doesn't matter. None of it matters when I see this one guy who won't bow to me. Think about what's going on. Think about how psychopathic someone like a Haman is, that he could throw out all of those things that everybody would dream of because he has this one faith that every single person has to bow down to him. And that is the moment that Haman self-destructs. And his family allows him to self-destruct. The rabbis say, anybody who puts his eyes to something that's not meant for him, not only does he or she not get what they wanted, they also lose what they actually have. You lose what you have. Because God says, if you can't appreciate what I've given you, if you can't count your blessings and realize that this is who you are and this is who you should be, and be the best type of person with good relationships, with good midot, with proper characteristics, using whatever Hashem has given you. If you can't appreciate that, then nothing that can come your way in the future is going to do any good for you. You won't get that. You'll spend your whole life eating away inside about what you can't have, and you'll never appreciate what you actually do have. It's as if you didn't have it. How many of us come home after a long day and we should be looking around at our house and saying, look at the home I have, look at the community I have, look at the family that I have, look at all of the positive things. But we come home and we say, I wish I had this clothing, or I wish I was 5 pounds skinny. I wish I was this, I wish I was that. We're always playing the I wish I was this, I wish I was that, I wish I had this, I wish I had that. We're always in our fantasy land. We're always in that imaginative state. And that's what's destroying us on the inside. It's what's eating away at who we are. It's lacking our self-confidence. I want to share with you one other thing, and then I'll get to Frida, which is notice the following. I want to ask you, you're all moms. How do you feel when one of your children comes and says to you, Mom, I want whatever Game Boy is there? And you say, no, we're not going to get that. Well, you never get me anything. Johnny has it. They have it. Why can't we go where they're going? What does that make you feel? just clean sweep. Just clean sweep, right? Because it kills you, right? There's nothing that could kill a mom or a dad more than, look what I gave you. Look how hard I'm working. I'm killing myself every day, every night to give you all of this. And look what I gave you. And all you can do is come to me and say, that what is that? I want what my neighbor has. If your child says that to you, you're dead inside. It just kills you, right? Take a thing and stab me in the heart. How do you think it feels? God's our Father, provides all. God's sitting there going, look what I gave to you. One on one side, fifth one on the other side. What is it parallel? Marilyn? Jealousy is parallel to honoring your parents. Because when you're jealous of somebody, what you're essentially saying is, Mom and Dad, you didn't give me enough. My life is not great. You gave me a bad life. I could get a better one with somebody else. If a person has honor for their parents, both physical parents as well as Hashem, their spiritual parent, you don't have to be jealous of anything. When you're jealous, you're saying, I don't want this life. The life you gave me, I want that person's life. I want to be them, right? Nothing destroys a relationship with one's parents, one's God, more than making that type of a claim, than making that type of a statement. And none of us would ever utter it, but that's essentially what we're saying with our actions, with our feelings. So we have to adjust our sense of thinking. We have to not let the Haman in us take over and say, well, what about what I don't have? What about what I wish I could get? Be obsessing about the fantasies in life instead of looking around and saying to ourselves, what do I actually have? Look at all of the beracha. And this is what's meant for me. And I'm going to use this in the best way possible. And I'll pray to Hashem for him to give me more, to give me what's good for me at this time. Whatever Hashem gives me is good. But having that sense of gratitude and appreciation is critical to avoiding all of this non-real stuff. This is all not reality. This is what the rabbis say. Don't live in a fictitious world. Live in the real world that I gave you. Look around you, count your blessings, appreciate what you have, realize that that's what was meant for you. I've given it to you with love for you to do in the best way possible. And then if I choose to give you something more and you want to pray to me, we'll continue to build our relationship together. but don't obsess over what the other person has. I'm your parents are your parents, and we've given you the life that you are going to be able to be most successful at. And that is, I think, a really important point. For me, when I read the Megillah, a major theme is to identify the Haman within ourselves and destroy that Haman. That's what we really do when we destroy Amalek. When we read this week at Parashat Zachor, which, by the way, women should try and make it to Bet Knesset if you can this week, to hear Parashat Zachor, to destroy Amalek, is to destroy that feeling inside of us, that feeling that I'm not enough, the feeling that it's just random, the feeling that God didn't give me what I'm deserving of, the feeling of I wish I had someone else's life instead of just being appreciative of what I have. And I think if we can reorient our way of thinking, if we can take the messages of our rabbis that they're saying over here to live in reality and to appreciate what it is that we have, I think we'll have what we all want, which is the theme of Purim, which is simcha, which is happiness. If we're really looking for happiness, happiness is in the relationships we have. It's in the blessings that Hashem has given us. It's in the appreciation and in the gratitude. It's in what those paraplegics had 6 months after their accident, a feeling of gratitude that they were alive, a feeling that they're going to do the best with the circumstances that they have and the relationships that they've built. And that's what they're going to do. It's not the feeling of the lottery winners of what happened to me? What could I potentially have? What am I missing? What am I lacking? Appreciation is what definitely leads us to happiness. And we have the job on this Purim to destroy that Haman inside of us, rid that Amalek and that obsession with fantasy world, and to live in the reality and appreciate that which Hashem has given us. Questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, wonderful. Enjoy. Have a great rest of the day.